Hey, everybody. Welcome to You Rankin with me. I am one of your hosts, Chad Webb, and over there to my right is the other host, James Hancock. How's it going, James?
Doing pretty good, man. Doing just fine.
Great, great,
Oh,
great. There's a cat.
cat.
And we have, as usual, our regular guest, Kerri Webb. How's it going, Kerri?
Going good, thanks.
Today, as you can see in the background, we are doing kind of a short one today. The Evil Dead franchise. The Evil Dead franchise just had three movies for a very long time, and then there came a remake around 2013, and then I think next year it's getting another one, Evil Dead Rises. Oh, and don't forget about the show, which I still have not yet seen, but I plan to watch it soon. We've all seen the four movies. Very excited about the new one coming out. So we're just going to rank these four movies as they exist. Because I'm a huge fan. You can tell by my shirt. Carrie's also wearing a Evil Dead shirt. James, are you ranking with me?
I am. Oh yeah, bro.
Carrie, are you ranking with me?
Yep.
Groove. Let's start. All right. So we're gonna how this works is we're just gonna go around. One person will start, and then we'll just go around in like a little circle. Telling you what our number four is to our number one. Since it's only four, I'm really thinking that there's not really going to be a wait for it. Normally, if there's like a really high abundance of films that we're ranking or whatever we're ranking, we'll usually have a wait for it so that we're not talking about someone's number one or number two at the very end. And if someone does a wait for it here, it's probably their number one. So I think we can, if there's like a sort of, and there's only three, so if there's like a sort of unanimous one, we'll just wing it and figure out what to talk about when. All right. So, we can go. Let's start with Kerri this time and see what her number four is.
My number four is Army of Darkness.
Army of Darkness. All right. Well, my number four is Evil Dead 2013. James, what is your number four?
Mine's Army of Darkness.
All right. So now we will go ahead and talk about Army of Darkness. Kerri, do you want to start with Army of Darkness?
Sure. So this one I really love it, but it's my number four because I think it's the least horror of the four movies. And I really do gravitate towards the horror aspects more than the comedy aspects. Army of Darkness is a bit more like comedy fantasy than the rest of the movies. So that's kind of what puts it a little bit below for me. Whenever I watch it, I just can't get into it quite as much as the other films. So that's why it's my number four, but it's still an amazing film. I love all the stuff with S-Smart. I love Ash's kind of relationship with the woman in this movie whose name I'm forgetting.
I can't remember either.
I don't know. Just some of the comedic bits in this movie are really, really fantastic.
Yeah, it's just pillow talk, baby. There's just this movie is actually like really, really quotable. It's really cool how they lead into this from Evil Dead 2, which I think that movie stands on its own. But then, towards the end of that movie, you get to see him going into this medieval kind of world, and he's not very happy about it. And then, he shows up in this world. He's kind of an asshole. People are mystified by who he is. He's able to slay the Deadites that have been plaguing them and stuff like that. There's like a lot of really great parts in this. Like Kerri said, a lot of the comedy I think really works. Like the whole bit about him trying to go find that book, and he's got to say, it's like, find the right book, say the specific words, the Barata Niktu, or I once memorized the entire thing, but just like Ash does, I forgot the words exactly. A lot of those bits are really great. Like the ones where it's like a thing turns into like a bunch of little ashes, and then they form like one big giant one, or and then it's like a two-head thing or whatever that happens. There's a lot of really fun stuff. I do kind of agree with Kerri that it's not like the most horror out of the three. It's the least horror out of all of them. It goes into a lot of camp, and I think the third act kind of gets a little ridiculous at some parts, but it's also very, very fun. I have this just slightly higher than number 4, and I'll explain why my number 4 is my number 4 after we finish or when we get there. But yeah, James, what do you think about Army of Darkness?
So I feel like I agree with pretty much whatever Kerri said. I like this series of movies for like the horror aspect of it, and this one does get away from it. So the saying is Klaatu Barada Nikto. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. But it's funny because it's the saying from Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's what they say, the alien or the whatever is in Day the Earth Stood Still.
So it's kind of a callback there.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the movie itself, like, I mean, it's good. It's got awesome bits. It's got awesome parts. This is my boomstick, like, that whole thing.
Yeah.
This is just, quote one little thing from it. It's all good, but I think as far as like the horror aspect that I enjoy from the other movies in this series, it's really just why it's number 4 for me.
Yeah. So I think we're all in agreement, just not all unanimously in placement.
Yeah.
So I'll go ahead with my. I'll just say my number 3 is Army of Darkness. So then we'll go on to James for his number 3.
Mine was Evil Dead 2.
Wow. Okay, Evil Dead 2. Kerri, what is your number 3?
My number 3 is Evil Dead 2013.
Interesting. For some reason I thought you were going to place that a little bit higher. No, I know you really like that one. Okay, so we're kind of all over the place here. Although I did rank Evil Dead 2013 number 4, and she ranked it number 3. So we'll go ahead and talk about that one right now. At our number 3 spot. Not sure if that's where it'll end up, but yeah. So I'll go ahead and start this one. Evil Dead 2013. This was not the first Evil Dead that I saw, but this was the exact year that I got into Evil Dead. Because I didn't grow up like a huge horror fan, but I knew that a mutual friend of James and I, James, we didn't see this in theater together, did we?
Did we?
I
We
saw
might
it.
have.
I saw it with a mutual friend, but I can't remember if you were there or not.
I know I saw it with Austin because he likes these movies too a
We
lot.
probably all went and saw it together, but anyway,
We might have. Yeah.
regardless, I was excited but very nervous because I knew this looked like a legit horror. It was like being, advertised as like NC-17. This really goes there. This is not your mama's horror movie kind of a deal. And I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll watch the first 2, or I can't remember if I saw all 3, but I at least wanted to watch the first one to know what I was getting into. The very, very different movies from the original to this one. This one, for me, it's the weakest because not just because it's a remake, but because I don't super love the style. When I think of Evil Dead, I do think of the camp, and I think of the silly, low-budget horror that Evil Dead is. So that's why Evil Dead 2013, I respect a lot of, because I do like this movie. I respect a lot of the practical effects that they use, a lot of the, just the way that they tried to make this. They really were trying to make an actual film here. But there are some parts that are a little bit silly and a little too disturbing for me, but not in a good way. The very opening with the girl being burnt is very corny and cheesy to me, and I'm like, it's a little bit cringe, but I could see how some people might really enjoy that. And then there's spoiler, but there's a dog death in this that is really, really brutal, and it really just makes me kind of dislike this movie every single time I see that, and I just kind of skip past it. It's a little bit like what I do with John Wick a lot of the times. Just skip that dog part because I hate that part. The rest of the movie is pretty great. It just doesn't scream Evil Dead to me, and so that's why it's number 4. It's very close though. I say it's a very well done remake. I don't want it being my number 4. Dissuade you from seeing it if you haven't seen it, because I do think it's a very well made movie, and it's pretty scary. Yeah, James, what do you think of Evil Dead 2013?
So I actually had this as my number 1,
Wow.
and
Okay.
pretty much because it was terrifying. Yeah.
Okay.
I remember liking the original Evil Dead a lot, and the second one was definitely legit. Like I definitely like it a lot too, but I feel like it got its kind of modern like remake, it's up to date kind of graphics and effects and everything, and it was terrifying and I loved it. And that's kind of like what I go for with horror movies. Like I mean, when I was younger I didn't really watch them that much. I've definitely like branched out as I've grown up, so I do like watching like more horror movies now, but I I like good bit of terror in my horror movies, and this one absolutely did it. Is a huge turnaround from at least the scare factor for the most part, from like definitely Army of Darkness and mostly Evil Dead 2. But I think it was nice to see kind of like all of those effects brought up into like present day. Oh, it's almost a decade old now, but present day enough. I know a lot of gripes. You don't really get Ash back. He's not really in it. Some folks may not like, some of the characters in this one might not seem quite as likable or three-dimensional maybe as compared to some of the other movies. But it's the scare factor for me, man. I loved it. I loved every bit of it. It brought back the I think there was the shotgun. You get the little sawed-off shotgun in there. They had the necklace thing was pretty important. They had the forest tree vine rape scene was pretty front and center, pretty gory on the screen, but like I feel like that kind of terrifying stuff is what I like more. And the little creepy girl, and I don't do creepy kids when it comes to horror movies and creepy chicks and whatnot, so that kind of did it for me right there. But I like a lot of things about this movie, and yeah, it tried to go where some don't really try to, and I think it was a great series or franchise to do this with, just based on the effects and how everything looked in the older ones. Like I think this was a really, really good one to have done in modern-ish, effects. I loved it.
Yeah, no, that's apparent that you love that, and I'm glad you did. It's a really well made film, and I think that goes to show, like with just horror in general, is like what works for someone. So one person might not work for others. Is my number 4 his number 1? I know a lot of people who love this Evil Dead remake, but I think like the horror for me works more in the classics, which not always. I do love a lot of like modern horror films. But yeah, that really worked for you. Kerri, what do you think about Evil Dead 2013?
I absolutely love this movie. This at times has been my number 1 in the franchise. I would say on rewatches, it's my number 3, because I think maybe the first time we watched it, we didn't have pets, and I guess maybe the dog death didn't affect me as much. Now it really gets to me. So that's really the only thing for me putting it at number 3. I think this movie is amazing. I think it's just like, it's so cool because it's just like the version of Evil Dead that we maybe could have gotten it's the version with the updated special effects. Like you get to see all of the things that maybe Sam Raimi could have done if those effects had existed, or if he had the budget when he was making the Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. I like the twist on the storyline. I like that it's not just a straight like shot for shot or even completely a plot remake. We're introducing different characters. We're not really touching Ash or the other characters in the original movies. We're getting these cool new characters. We get a twist on, you think it's going to be the brother that, well, I guess this is spoilers, so skip ahead for like 2 minutes if you don't want spoilers.
And you're talking for 2 minutes? Okay, I'm going to sit
It's
back.
not going to be 2 minutes, but just in case. But I like that we think the whole time it's going to be the brother that survives, and then it turns out to be Maya who survives. And I think her whole ending sequence is just so badass and awesome, and the whole blood raining down. I think it's so cool. I love this movie.
And I will add that a lot of the torture and kill and just like effects and stuff like that are just done really well. Like the nail gun, just like stuff like that is just so gruesome and just really they really did a good job making that one. The Evil Dead ones for me they're all very close. So it's only 4 movies and I love the entire franchise. So yeah, James, what is your number 2?
Number 2, I put the original Evil Dead.
All right, Kerri, what is your number 2?
Evil Dead 2.
And my number 2 is also The Evil Dead, the very original The Evil Dead. So James, you can start on this one. What did you think?
So I really, really liked seeing this, especially like the first time I ever did. It was really just one of those kind of like, I guess like different ones in a way from like most of the ones I've seen before. I feel like it takes elements from all of like some of the older classic ones, and it's still like it is straight up like a horror movie. So like they don't try to put. I think there's not much funny stuff in there, but I mean maybe a thing or two. But I liked just the overall. Even for like the 80s, I liked the effects for the time it was made, and I liked the effects. Everything was done, well enough as it could have been. I think it kind of also wasn't really afraid to go there with some of like the horror parts of it. So I think to me, like, because always liked watching like The Exorcist and like the Annabelle horror and things like that. So you get kind of like the whole in the house aspect versus, and then you get like the creepy faces, creepy chicks, and all over the place. So I think this one kind of like combined what I really liked about some of the more classic ones and kind of like kept it within like a contained area too at the same time. So I think it's like the whole house horror thing along with the weird faces and whatnot. And I think I just liked that most of it. That's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. Kerri, what did you think about The Evil Dead?
Yeah, so this is my number 1. And I prefer it a little bit over Evil Dead 2 because I think it is the scarier movie of the two. And just in my personal opinion, Evil Dead 2 leans a lot into the comedy. And for me, just what I don't know, just the scarier one is sometimes, what I'll go with, I guess. I don't know. I know it could be a toss. Between my top 3, it could be a toss-up at any given time. But usually my favorite is The Evil Dead, just the classic original.
Is there anything specifically that like you liked about it other than it being scary?
I know. I like the story in this one. In the second one, you do kind of get that kind of rush timeline at the beginning, recapping the first one. I don't know. I think the shots with like the swinging back and forth are so spooky. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, so The Evil Dead is my number 2, and Evil Dead 2 is really the only reason why it's not my number 1, because this movie is fantastic. This is like other than maybe like Night of the Living Dead and stuff like that, this is the like classic, like maybe Texas Chainsaw Massacre, stuff like that, Halloween. A lot of these movies that are classics that are made on such a small budget. This is the one where they were literally just friends from college going to make a movie. The story that you hear about this, and they're running out of money. There's so many stories about them like not being able to like eat actual food and just running out of like everything to not be able to make this movie. So they had to make this movie by inventing camera techniques and shots, and I think that stories like that make it really stand out for me as just a phenomenally made horror film. I do agree. I think it's the slightly scarier of the two if you talk about Evil Dead, or The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. And there are a couple, I think, that you could call maybe kind of campy, funny parts where with like, what is it, Linda?
Yeah.
Sitting there, the whole time and stuff like that. And the funny story about that is apparently that actress was like, trying to annoy people by doing that little girl voice, and then Sam Raimi was trying to get her to be like malevolent, and then he was like, no wait, scratch that, do that, because that's scary as hell. Do that weird little girl voice the whole time. It's gonna unnerve people because everybody was like creeped out. But yeah, this is the classic. Like, this has been remade not just with Evil Dead 2013, but also with its sequel, Evil Dead 2, and with The Cabin in the Woods. This is just kind of like a timeless story of kids going to a cabin, finding something, reading the thing that they shouldn't, the Necronomicon Ex Mortis, and stuff starts happening. They're taken over by the Deadites. The tree thing happens that is not really it's kind of a little problematic today, but it is what it is. It's a horror movie. Spoiler alert for The Evil Dead. Everyone except for Ash dies, and it's just like one of the greatest like low budget horror movies ever made. I personally find this one actually scarier than Evil Dead 2013, just because it is that low budget. Like, you feel like you could have found this footage outside and played it, and it could have really happened. That to me is the scariest part. And like the end, even with like the kind of stop motion like effects with like the tongue coming out of the book and stuff melting, and it's gross. And I'm like, ugh, this is brilliant. Anyways, that's what I think about The Evil Dead. I absolutely love it. So we've already all mentioned our number ones, and no one else had Evil Dead 2 as their number one, but I did, and that's the only movie that we haven't discussed yet. Kerri, do you want to start with Evil Dead 2?
Sure. I'll just say this is number 2 for me, like I said earlier, because it's, for me, a little less scary than The Evil Dead. But this is obviously just a classic, amazing movie. There's so many great additions in this movie to the first one, like and so many iconic parts of Evil Dead. Like, this is, I think, where like Ash chops off his arm and replaces it with the shotgun, and you have the whole deer head laughing scene. There's so many great parts to this movie, and if I'm looking for something a little on the lighter side, which is weird to say about Evil Dead movies, but if I'm looking for something more on the lighter side, this is the one I throw on.
Sure, yeah. All right, so I'll let James go ahead and talk about Evil Dead 2, and then I'll wrap it up since it's my number one.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I think, again, I kind of agree with a lot of what Kerri said. Like, I think there are definitely parts like you can definitely appreciate with this movie, and if you're not always looking to be completely terrified by horror movies, then yeah, definitely check this one out because it's really solid. It's definitely good, and like you said, the possessed hand scene's really cool. Was it the shotgun or the chainsaw?
Oh, it's a chainsaw, duh.
Is it the chainsaw? Okay.
Yeah, no, you're right.
But again, like for me, because it tones down a little bit of like the horror aspect itself, or maybe like, but like if you watch like the original and then you watch this one, you're kind of like used to seeing like what the Deadites look like or what kind of the effects are. There's only kind of so much they can do after that. And I think really that's just what it made it number 3 for me. I realized I kind of ranked these based on like scariness, but it's how I kind of looked at them when I was watching them. So that's what I look for, like in entertaining or good horror movies. And this one just wasn't quite as much as the other two. So that's just why it's number 3 for me.
Yeah, everybody has a different way of ranking these, and none are better than the others. They're just, personal, and I love that everyone has different styles of ranking the movies. Mine is because, I rank Evil Dead 2 number 1 because it's just one of my favorite movies of all time. I think this is the greatest horror comedy that's ever been made. I think it's the one that showed people how to make a horror comedy, how to blend horror and comedy together. And this is the one I think that Sam Raimi wanted to make had he had more money, because he did have a little bit more money when making this one. This is another one where he invented a lot of different, ways of doing things, like tilting the entire set so the blood just drops onto Bruce Campbell's face, and it's like, is he gonna drown? We don't know. Let's just do it anyways. And just like this, like crazy, like experimental style of filmmaking, I think is just so impressive. It is. Yeah, they had more of a budget to work with, so now that they can actually sit there and just craft these shots without having to work against budget and time and all this stuff, and they really, I love how they kind of encapsulate the entire first movie in like the first like 5 minutes of Evil Dead 2. They get that done, and then they're like, let's just do it all again, but different. And is there a story? Kind of. You get like the daughter of the guy who originally found the book or whatever coming with people she met. I don't know if that's like her work associate comes with her. There's a little bit of story there. There's Henrietta in the basement, played by Ted Raimi. That's just one of the most excellent monster effects I've ever seen. I love how they go between her being totally gruesome to her being that actual old woman that's like, help me from down here. I just find that so incredible and creepy. And just when they throw Ash down into the cellar with Henrietta, and then you hear the story about, and we put her in the cellar. And then you're like, oh my God, something's in the cellar. Like, to me, that's terrifying. And so, it's just all of that. There's a lot of jump scares. There's a lot of just crazy shit that happens. Like one of the Deadites gets the eyeball popped out of its face and it lands in a girl's mouth. It's just like anything that he can think of to do, he just does, and it's hilarious. And also scary. And I just think this one just works. It's like, the perfect, like 80 minutes or however long this movie is.
It's pretty short. Yeah.
You can watch it and just like go on an adventure with this movie, like more so than Army of Darkness, because I think that one has a little bit of pacing issues. And like you guys said, it's not as scary. So this one has the scares and the comedy all mixed together. And for me, that just works the most because I love horror comedies. So it really, really, this is just one of my favorite movies. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this ranking. And you guys were on board, and I was very excited because we all love the Evil Dead franchise. And we're very excited for Evil Dead Rises, whatever that's going to be. I don't really know much about it. I'm excited to check out the show. This is just Sam Raimi is one of my favorite filmmakers. I loved Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I know not everybody did, but I love anything Sam Raimi when he's going full force, just throwing Bruce Campbell in there and doing weird shit to him. Pizza Papa, all that stuff. That was our Evil Dead ranking. I think everybody did a great job. We love these movies.
Coming in at fourth place, Army of Darkness. In third place, Evil Dead 2013. In second place, Evil Dead 2.
I'm crushed.
And in first place, The Evil Dead.
Wow. We almost have it in 1, 2, 3, and 4 how they came out, except we have Army of Darkness and Evil Dead.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. But I think we did a great job. I think that's a really great final ranking. Watch our other videos. We did Christmas tier ranking. We did Harry Potter. We did Edgar Wright. We did all 3 phases of the MCU. And we're very excited soon to do the 4th phase of the MCU as soon as Wakanda Forever drops, which is actually pretty soon. So I'm very excited to get that one underway. We have a lot of other ideas that we're throwing out there. Might do Quentin Tarantino, might do some Mike Flanagan, some, we might, we're already planning to do a Halloween ranking.
Thought we were going to do Star Wars, maybe.
We were definitely going to do Star Wars.
Yeah.
We have a Scream ranking coming up at some point. we got a lot of ideas we're throwing around there, and we're very excited to keep this show going because we have a fun time. Me, James, Kerri, and whoever else shows up on the show. So yeah, no one else has any thoughts. I'll go ahead and close it out. Make sure you like and subscribe. And James, are you ranking with me? Kerri, are you ranking with me?
Oh, are we supposed to say yes? Oops.
And everybody else, are you ranking with me?
Yes, this whole time I have been.